Hi Founder fans, Jason here, and today we're discussing Federal Farmer number 11, where the federal farmer in this part of our series finally moves on from criticizing the House of Representatives to discussing the United States Senate. And, to my surprise, he actually finds much of the Senate pretty agreeable. He does have 4 points that we are going to go over that he disagrees with, but for the Senate, I'll remind you that the Anti-Federalists, as they were slandered with, they consider themselves the real Federalists, and the people who call themselves Federalists, the Anti-Federalists, saw as consolidationists, or what we would call nationalists today. They're the ones, the Anti-Federalists, who saw themselves really wanting a federation of states. So when you look at the United States Senate that gave equal representation to each state, they saw that as a very federal move, and the federal farmer comments on that. He also comments on, at the time, and for much of American history, we didn't vote for senators. They were chosen by the state representatives and sent by the states however the states saw fit. And this he saw as good. You're giving power to the states. And additionally, he actually saw the Senate in this light as more democratic than the House of Representatives, because the people who chose the senators were elected to the state government, and there were a lot more people elected to state governments, so they took less votes by the common people to elect them. So he actually says he believes the Senate to be a more democratic branch. Now, of course, the means of choosing senators has since changed, but the point is interesting and worth discussing. Now, let's move on to some of his disagreements. They're fairly obvious, some of them. First, he discusses term length. He's not grossed out by it. He's disappointed, though. He talks about term length. He says that 6 years is a long time, and we want our representatives to represent the people, but 6 years is enough time for someone to not be concerned about losing their office, and therefore they'll become independent, or less dependent, I should say, on the will and the desires of the people they're supposed to represent. He actually comes to the idea, he doesn't recommend a specific amount of time, but he says 3 or 4 years seems more appropriate, because one of the things he liked about the Senate is that while you want the House of Representatives cycling through people very quickly, longer terms in the Senate adds a little bit more stability. And 6 years is a little too much stability, but 3 or 4 years, the federal farmer believes, is just the baby bear's porridge of stability. He then goes on to discuss recall of senators. Again, they're getting comfortable at 6 years. We don't want them too comfortable. We want to be able to call them back whenever we see fit. We, of course, being the state governments in the federal farmer's mind. And he brings up the idea that the Continental Congress could recall its delegates at any time. If you're sending ambassadors to another nation, you can bring them up at any time. And he doesn't bring this up specifically, but I believe it was Brutus said this, so I'm going to throw it in here. Brutus says, if you hire someone to do a job for you and they don't do a good job, you should be able to fire them. And that's essentially the idea that the Anti-Federalists run with a recall during this period of American history. Why can't we, if they're doing a bad job, we're going to bring them back and replace them. Why can't we do that? There are representatives, especially at a time when they weren't elected. They were chosen by the states in the first place anyway. The third issue that the federal farmer takes up is rotation. He's nervous that, kind of piggybacking off the term limits from earlier, 6 years is a long time. We don't want people getting comfortable. There also should be a mechanism, he believed, for people to not get comfortable and to give opportunities to other people who are worthy to get into the U.S. Senate. Now, he takes up an idea that the Continental Congress actually uses. The Continental Congress, after the Articles of Confederation were finally ratified, they have a rule that one representative can only serve for 3 years in any 6-year period. So if you serve for 2 years, you go back for one more, serve for 3 years. Let me say this again. You go for 2 years and 4 years go by and you serve for one more, that's your 6th year. So you're good to come back. Things like that. I think I counted that out right, but you get my point. Now, the federal farmer doesn't take this exact phrasing. He recommends that people can only be a U.S. Senator for 4 out of every 6 years. Now, again, he is saying that it should be lowered to 3 or 4 year terms. And I know we're doing a lot of math in this episode, but basically, if you serve for 4 years, you have to wait at least 2 years to fill a vacant appointment or something of that fashion. So it does break it up so you don't have people there for 40 years, which we may or may not have experienced time and again in this country, though we don't talk about modern politics here. And the last issue that he discusses is treaties. Now, he actually is very amenable to the way treaties are ratified through the U.S. Senate. He actually says, I'm paraphrasing here, but something along the lines of, I'm not going to dwell on this too long because I can't see a better way of doing it. I have my doubts about it, but I can't see a better way of doing it. However, in there, and it's kind of a lengthy discussion about the different types of treaties, how the House of Representatives is involved in anything when it comes to diplomacy, economic negotiations with other countries and things of that nature. So he does go at length on that. And then real quick in there, he kind of files his complaint under the radar, which is officers. Why would the United States Senate have anything to do with the appointment of officers in the executive branch? Why do they get to approve that, especially when they're paying them and they can impeach them? They should have no say in those particular officers. It's only like a sentence in there in a 2 lengthy paragraph discussion on treaties. And that, for the most part, is the beginning of the federal farmers discussion on the United States Senate. There will, of course, be more. This is Federal Farmer number 11. I hope you enjoyed this video. If you did, hit like. If you're new here, subscribe. I put out videos. The rest of the week is about people of the American Revolution, but Fridays we have Anti-Federalist Friday. Used to be Federalist Friday, but we got through the Federalists. Here we are doing Anti-Federalist. We'll do the Federalists again pretty soon. I am your humble and obedient servant, and I'll be back with another founder for you tomorrow.